September 15th, 1967. The night Johnny Carson stepped into Romano's restaurant in Burbank, Betty Thompson was simply trying to get through another dinner shift. She had no idea that the well-mannered man in a sharply tailored suit, relaxing after his Tonight Show taping, would become her most consistent customer, or that his small gestures of appreciation would one day support the most meaningful dream she could imagine. This isn't just a story about a well-known television figure and a waitress. It's about how two people from separate worlds found comfort in routine and friendship during the classic era of television, and how a woman's 25 years of steady faith created something that continues to make a difference today. Romano's restaurant in Burbank sat in the perfect spot to catch the late-night crowd from NBC studios. It wasn't fancy, red vinyl booths, checkered tablecloths, and simple Italian-American dishes, but it was warm, consistent, and open late enough for people in television who kept unpredictable schedules. Betty Thompson had been working there for 3 years, serving everyone from camera crews to network executives. At 32, she was a single mother raising her 8-year-old daughter, working evenings so she could be home when Sarah returned from school. It was 11:15 p.m. when Johnny Carson walked through the door. Betty knew him instantly. Everyone in America recognized that face, that smile, that neatly styled hair. He had been hosting The Tonight Show for 5 years, but seeing him in person was still surprising. "Good evening," Johnny said to the hostess. "Table for one, please. Somewhere quiet, if possible." Betty watched from across the room as he settled into booth 12. He appeared different without cameras or an audience, tired, but with the look of someone who had finished a successful day. "I'll take booth 12, Betty told her manager. Something about Johnny's calm presence made her want to give excellent service. "Good evening, Mr. Carson," Betty said as she approached with water and a menu. "Welcome to Romano's." Johnny looked up with his well-known smile, though gentler than the one viewers saw on television. "Please, call me Johnny. And thank you. This place has a comfortable feeling. Could I start with something to drink? Coffee, of course. And if you'd like suggestions, I can help. Our pasta is made fresh daily." She felt herself relax. Even with his fame, Johnny spoke just like any other guest. "The veal parmigiana is excellent, and all our pasta is made in-house. But if you want something lighter after a long day, the chicken piccata is a great option." "The chicken piccata sounds perfect. Thank you for the recommendation." As Betty served him throughout the evening, they talked about simple topics: the weather, the restaurant, everyday life in Burbank. Johnny asked about her daughter, her job, and her hopes for the future. He listened sincerely, making her feel valued. "You know," Johnny said as he finished his meal, "I think I've found my new favorite restaurant." When he paid the bill, Johnny left a $50 tip on a $20 meal. "Carson, Johnny, this is too much," Betty said quietly. "Betty, you made me feel like a real person instead of a TV figure." "That means more than money," he replied. As Johnny headed toward the door, he paused. "Would it be all right if I came back sometime? When you're in the area, booth 12 will be waiting for you," Betty said with a small smile. Neither of them realized that Johnny Carson had just discovered the place he would rely on for the next 25 years. 3 nights later, Johnny returned, and then again 3 nights after that. Before long, a routine formed that shaped both of their lives for the next quarter-century. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, the Tonight Show taping days, Johnny would arrive at Romano's around 11 p.m., always booth 12, always asking for Betty, always choosing simple, comfortable meals. "How was the show tonight?" became Betty's usual greeting. "Better knowing I get to end the day here," became Johnny's consistent reply. Betty gradually realized that Romano's was more than a restaurant to Johnny. It was the one place where he could unwind. After 3 hours of performing for millions, he needed somewhere he could just exist without expectations. "You know what I appreciate about this place?" Johnny said one evening in 1969. "No one asks me to be funny. No one wants autographs. I can just eat and have a normal conversation." "Is that rare for you?" Betty asked. "More than you'd think. Most places, people expect me to be Johnny Carson every moment. Here, I can just be John." Betty valued these conversations. Johnny talked about his childhood in Nebraska, his early work in radio, and the goals he still hoped to pursue beyond television. She shared updates about Sarah's progress in school, her own dream of opening a children's bookstore someday, and her love of reading. "You should do it," Johnny encouraged her during one of their talks in 1971. Open that bookstore. The world needs more people who care about children's learning, Johnny said. Someday, Betty replied softly. When I've saved enough. That night, Johnny left a $100 tip with a small note for the future bookstore. Dreams don't work unless we do. After he left, Betty sat alone in the quiet restaurant and made a choice that would shape the next 21 years of her life. When she got home, she found an old silver coffee tin in her cabinet. She placed Johnny's tip inside and made a quiet promise. Every dollar Johnny gives me, I'll save. Not for myself, but for something meaningful, something that reflects what he believes in. Week after week, month after month, and year after year, Betty saved every tip Johnny left. She never used a single dollar. She never told anyone about the growing fund. She simply trusted that one day she would understand its purpose. As The Tonight Show became a cultural landmark, Johnny's regular visits to Romano's became even more important to him. The restaurant was his retreat from the demands of fame, a place where he could enjoy a meal and reconnect with the person he was before becoming a national figure. 30 years from now, Johnny said during a conversation in 1975, people won't remember most of the jokes I've told or the guests I've interviewed. But maybe they'll remember that television can bring people together, that humor can help people, that education matters. You do more than entertain, Betty told him. You help people end their day with a smile. That's valuable. By then, the silver tin had become heavy, filled with 8 years of Johnny's generosity. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Betty watched Johnny move through the evolving world of television and American culture. She witnessed his professional highs, personal challenges, and quiet reflections on what his legacy would mean. Sometimes I wonder what I'll be remembered for, Johnny admitted one evening in 1982, during his 20th year hosting The Tonight Show. I've told thousands of jokes and interviewed thousands of guests. But what truly matters? You matter, Betty said gently. You've brought joy to millions. You've given people something steady to end their day with. That's not small. That's everything. Johnny looked at her with appreciation. You always put things in perspective, Betty. That's rare. By this time, Sarah had grown up and moved away, though she always asked about Mr. Johnny during phone calls. Johnny never forgot to ask about her either, especially when celebrating her college. He celebrated Sarah's graduation, her marriage, and even the arrival of her children. You raised a wonderful daughter, Johnny told Betty. She reflects who you are. She learned kindness from watching how you treat others. Betty replied, You've been a positive influence on both of us. By then, the silver coffee tin was extremely heavy, holding 15 years of saved tips and hopes. In the late 1980s, Betty finally began to see what her secret fund was meant to become. During their talks, Johnny often spoke about education, the importance of reading, and giving children the tools they needed to thrive. You know what really saddens me? Johnny said one evening in 1988. Kids who grow up without books, without someone to read to them, without discovering the world stories can open. Television entertains, but books create real change. Betty felt her heart jump. What could help those children? A place, Johnny said thoughtfully. Somewhere warm and inviting. A spot where kids can explore books, where parents can read with them, where stories feel alive. Not just a library, something that makes reading feel like an adventure. That night he left his usual generous tip, but Betty's mind was already racing. She finally understood what more than 2 decades of saving had been preparing her for. What if someone wanted to build a place like that? Betty asked during Johnny's next visit. Just hypothetically. Johnny's eyes brightened. I'd say that person would be creating something priceless. A child who loves reading grows into an adult who can change the world. The coffee tin was now nearly impossible to lift. On May 22, 1992, Johnny Carson announced his retirement from The Tonight Show. After 30 years, America's most trusted late-night host was stepping away. That evening, Johnny visited Romano's for one of his final regular meals. Betty noticed the mix of relief, sadness, and uncertainty on his face. It's time, Johnny said quietly. 30 years is long enough. Time for someone else to take the spotlight. What will you do now? Betty asked. I'm not sure yet, he said. Maybe travel. Spend time with family. Figure out who I am after being Johnny Carson for so long. Betty felt her. Her heart began to race. If Johnny was retiring, if this chapter of his life was closing, Then perhaps it was time for her long-kept secret to be shared. "Johnny," she said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I've never told anyone." She led him into the back office of the restaurant and brought out the silver coffee tin, now extremely heavy after 25 years of saved tips. "Every dollar you've ever left me is in this tin," Betty said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Every single one. I saved it all because I felt it was meant for something meaningful." Johnny looked at the tin in disbelief. "Betty, why would you do that? You could have used that money for yourself, for Sarah." "Because you taught me that the most valuable gifts are the ones that continue to help others," Betty said. "And tonight, when you spoke about children, books, and reading, I finally understood what this money was meant to become." Her voice grew firmer. "I want to use every penny you gave me to build a beautiful children's reading center in Burbank. A place where kids can discover books, where families can read together, where stories feel alive." Johnny's eyes filled with emotion. "Betty, do you understand what you're proposing?" "I'm saying that your generosity will help children fall in love with reading for generations," she replied. Johnny stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for his checkbook. "If you're willing to match your dedication with my gratitude, let's create something truly special." When he finished writing the check, their combined total reached $500,000. "Now we can build a place that makes reading feel magical." 6 months later, construction began on the Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center in Burbank. It would be a 5,000-square-foot space designed just for children. Cozy reading corners, interactive story zones, a small theater for storytelling sessions, and thousands of books for every age and interest. More than a building, it was intended to be a community gathering place where families could connect over books, where children could see reading as an adventure, and where the love of learning could grow and be celebrated. Johnny used his connections to invite children's authors, bring in educational specialists to shape programs, and encourage celebrities to join special events. Betty oversaw daily operations, welcoming every child who entered as if they were her own. "The grandchild. This place represents something meaningful," Johnny said at the center's opening ceremony in 1993. "It shows that when one person's kindness meets another person's belief, something special happens." The plaque beside the entrance read, "Built with love by Betty Thompson and Johnny Carson. Because every child deserves to discover the magic of reading." The Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center quickly became an important part of the Burbank community. Children who had never shown interest in books became eager readers. Families who had never read together began making it a nightly routine. The center's programs expanded to include literacy tutoring, summer reading sessions, and author events. Betty, now in her late 50s, discovered her purpose in managing the center. She watched thousands of children find joy in reading, many later achieving academic success they might not have reached otherwise. Johnny visited often, always bringing smiles with his light humor and genuine interest in the children's favorite books. He funded new programs, purchased additional books, and ensured the center had long-term financial support. "You know what I enjoy most about this?" Johnny told Betty during a visit in 1995. "These kids don't know me as a TV host. To them, I'm just Mr. Johnny who likes books. That's exactly how I hope to be remembered." Sarah, now a mother, brought her own children to the reading center. "Mom," she told Betty, "you saved more than money all those years. You saved dreams." When Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, the Reading Center held a special memorial event. Hundreds of families whose lives were shaped by the center gathered to honor the man who made it possible. But the most meaningful tribute came from the children: handwritten notes, drawings, and stories describing how books had changed their lives. All because a television host and a waitress believed in the value of reading. Betty, now in her 70s, continued running the center until her retirement in 2010. Under her leadership, the center had supported more than 15,000 children and their families, creating a reading culture that spread throughout the entire community. Today, the Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center continues to grow. Now managed by Sarah and her daughter, it has expanded to include digital literacy programs, STEM-focused reading activities, and collaborations with local schools. The original silver coffee tin remains in a place of honor in the center's lobby, empty now, yet still motivating visitors. A small plaque beside it reads, "Faith plus patience plus love equals magic." Betty Thompson, now 89, still volunteers at the center every week. She often sits in the children's area, watching new generations discover books, reflecting on the quiet conversations with Johnny that began everything. People often ask if she ever regretted not using the money for herself. From her favorite chair in the center, Betty explains that they don't see the full picture. She did spend it on herself, through every child who learns to appreciate reading, every family that connects through books, and every dream made possible because someone learned to read. All of it has become part of her life. The center has inspired similar programs across other cities, showing how the mix of celebrity influence, generosity, and steady belief can create long-lasting change. More than 50,000 children have now taken part in initiatives modeled after the Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center. When children ask Betty why she saved the money instead of using it, she repeats the same answer she gave Johnny Carson 25 years earlier. The most meaningful things in life are worth waiting for, and they are always more meaningful when shared. Johnny believed that education could transform the world. Betty believed in Johnny. Together, they proved both ideas true. The Tonight Show ended more than 30 years ago, but Johnny Carson's legacy continues every time a child opens a book for the first time, every time a family reads together, and every moment someone realizes that knowledge is one of the greatest gifts. Often, the most important conversations don't happen in front of millions, but across a dinner table late at night between two people who understand that kindness, patience, and trust can create something more enduring than fame. They can create hope, one story at a time. Betty Thompson never spent a single dollar of Johnny Carson's tips because she recognized something important about giving. The most meaningful gifts are the ones that encourage others to give as well. For 25 years, each tip was a gesture of appreciation from America's most respected host to the woman who made him feel understood. Every saved dollar was an act of belief from a waitress who trusted that great things come to those who wait for the right moment. Together, they built something neither could have created alone, a place where children discover that reading is magical, where families grow closer through books, and where a community learned that education forms the basis of every dream. The Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center stands as evidence that shared success becomes multiplied success. Every child who completes their education, every family who bonds over reading, and every life improved through literacy can be traced back to one simple decision: to save every small blessing until it could lift an entire community. And in the quieter moments, when the center is filled with children reading and families sharing stories, it feels as if Johnny Carson's soft laughter and Betty Thompson's steady faith still echo through the building, reminding everyone that the most meaningful magic happens when we believe in each other's dreams.